Hi, good evening. Welcome along to the Transfer Show. Great to have you with us. Now, in the next hour, we're going to bring you right up to speed with all of the developing transfer news this evening, and there's loads of it. Now, I say we, I'm delighted to say that Mark McAdam is with us as usual to give us the details of the stories that matter, and Premier League winning goalkeeper Asmir Begovic will give us the very best analysis. Great to see you both. Thank you for coming in. Ramsey to Newcastle. Is Yoane Wissa going to Newcastle?
Well, Eddie Howe would certainly be hopeful that they can get a deal for Yoane Wissa, but this isn't a simple situation. It's been really a bit of a saga over the course of this summer. The player wants to go to Newcastle. He wants to play for Eddie Howe. He wants to experience Champions League football. And he's going into the last year, although the club do have an additional year option on his contract. So he's got essentially 2 years left on his Brentford contract. And there has been that Newcastle offer that's been rejected. And as far as the club are concerned, they don't want to sell Yoane Wissa. They want to keep him. They don't want to completely decimate that team whilst they've got so many other changes. Thomas Frank, the backroom team, they want to try and keep the core of that squad together, of which Yoane Wissa was a huge part of their success last season. So it remains to be seen as to what happens. He is a part of a domino effect because we know that Brentford are in the market to try and sign Bournemouth's Dango Ouattara as well, and that has a knock-on effect. But it'd be interesting to see how this one develops. We know that there has been interest, and Keith Andrews was actually talking today in his pre-match press conference about this situation. Here's what he had to say on Yoane Wissa.
As a head coach, I want Yoane in the building. I want him to be part of the first-team squad. I see that moving forward, but obviously I'm very understanding of his situation. But for Yoane on Sunday, he won't be involved.
We've seen this sort of situation before, Asmir. How difficult is it for everyone involved when a player wants to go somewhere else and the club doesn't want him to go?
It's a very difficult situation. Obviously, the business side is where it really takes over in instances like this because Brentford want to maximise the value. The player wants to maximise his earnings, his career. He wants to go play at the highest level. So everyone's looking at their best interests. And obviously finding a deal in these situations can be difficult. I can understand why he wants to go to Newcastle. It's Champions League football. He's a great fit as well because he's an ideal replacement for Callum Wilson, who's left Newcastle. And he's a very dynamic player, runs a lot, covers a lot of distance, very aggressive, knows where the goal is as well. So he's obviously a finisher. So ticks a lot of boxes for Newcastle, and I can see why they want him.
OK, let's talk Liverpool now. Mark, they're after a couple of centre-backs. Giovanni Leone, the youngster, where are they with this one?
Yeah, 18-year-old centre-back at Parma. On Wednesday evening, the two clubs agreed a deal worth £26 million. The player is currently in the UK at the moment. I think one of the key things as well was the player wanted to join the Premier League champions. Who wouldn't with the squad they've got at their disposal at the moment? He is going to be a part of the first-team squad whilst he's only 18 years old. He is very much going to be a part of that team and that squad. One for the future without question. How much game time he'll get this season, but he's certainly in the thinking there of what Arne Slot wants to do. So, yeah, that's the latest with Giovanni Leone. We're just waiting to see whether Liverpool like to maybe try and go back into the market and sign another possible centre-back.
Well, let's talk about the other centre-back then. Mark Gay. What about his situation, Asmir? Because what's he got, Mark? 1 year left on his contract at
1 year
Palace?
left on his Palace contract.
So what does he do? Does he go to the champions? Does he stay with Palace? Given that if he goes to Liverpool, he might not play all the time.
Again, I think if the option to go to Liverpool is there, the appeal of going to the champions and one of the biggest clubs in the world is incredibly difficult to pass down. And I know there's been talks of him moving on before. I think it's been an absolutely incredible servant to Crystal Palace. He's won him now 2 trophies. He's done incredible things there. So it seems like the natural progression for him in his career to go test himself at the elite level. So going into your last year of your deal, you would love more security, I'm sure, in his life. He would like maybe a longer-term contract, which Liverpool will provide him with that. So, and Crystal Palace probably need to sell and cash in. They're not a club, I think, or most clubs aren't in positions to be able to let players go on a free. So it seems like there is a deal to be done, and if Liverpool do get him, then look out.
Does it get done, Mark?
Asmir's made a really important point. Mark Gay wants to play. Needs to play. You don't go from being a Crystal Palace captain, being the first name on the team sheet week in, week out, to being on the bench, even though it's a much bigger club and an opportunity to win silverware. But in 12 months' time, he would have been involved in the World Cup, and that's what he wants. So to be on the plane with Thomas Tuchel's squad and be a first name on the England team sheet, you have to have played. You have to have minutes under your belt. He goes to Liverpool, there may be a question mark. Does he get in ahead of Ibrahima Konate and Virgil van Dijk? Is he going to get the minutes? Is he going to play? And that will be his thought process ahead of making this move. The Crystal Palace stance is, we don't want to sell our captain on the cheap. We know that Newcastle tried to sign Mark Gay last summer. They got to around £65 million. Even that offer was rejected. It got close to what Parish wanted, but it wasn't close enough. We understand, again, the fee to get Mark Gay is substantial this summer. And will Liverpool pay it in its current guise? Probably not. Will there be a softening from Crystal Palace? Possibly. But my information is Steve Parish doesn't want to sell two key players this summer. Mark Gay being one, the other one, Eberechi Eze. And you have to look at that and say, whose need is more desperate? Spurs to get Eze in or Liverpool's to get Gay in? And I think that might answer the question.
Yeah, OK. Well, we know that Liverpool want Gay. We also know at the other end of the pitch, they have been linked with Alexander Isak. And Arne Slot told us today he wants at least one more forward.
It's clear that with Darwin gone and Luis Diaz gone, and even last season we had 5 or 6 options, I think. Again, Diogo, I need to mention him as well. So yeah, that we need to have one more attacker, at least.
Yeah, and we know who that might be. Asmir, I know you know Eddie Howe really well. How do you think he is going to handle this situation?
Well, it's a very difficult situation. I think it's a situation probably that's a little bit above him in terms of the clubs and the valuations on players and contracts and who's been promised what. So there can be very difficult situations and positions a manager can find themselves in because it's not for them to control all of these things. He will want to keep Alexander Isak, who wouldn't. You know, I think arguably the best striker in the Premier League. And he's going to communicate with him. He's going to look after him as well as he can. He also has to protect the squad. Obviously, he needs players who are all in, who are committed to the cause, not players who may be looking over their shoulders and looking for moves and maybe not being into their situation 100%. So it's a very, very difficult situation. But he's obviously very experienced now, how he's dealt with these things before, and I'm sure he's going to deal with it to the best of his abilities. What
do you think? 7:01 on September the 1st. Is he a Newcastle player or a Liverpool player?
I think he's a Newcastle player. I do feel like they, I think we talked about it a little bit off air. I think because of all these other strikers going somewhere else, I don't think Newcastle have a replacement. And I think for them to go into such a big season, as we mentioned earlier, 4 competitions, Champions League nights at St. James's Park, to not have their number 9, I feel like it's going to be difficult for them to accept any sort of bid. I know Liverpool will be desperate for him, but I feel like he stays unless they find a replacement.
Newcastle fans loving you at the moment. All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to turn our attention to the goalkeepers. Are Manchester City lining up a replacement for Ederson? Is James Trafford about to become third choice? Well, we're going to ask Asmir what he thinks about that. See you in a moment.